As doctors, after years of seeing patients in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, we start noticing signs that make us think, this person has a good chance of aging well. Because two people can both be 70 years old and have completely different health trajectories, one may already be losing strength, walking less, taking more medications, and becoming increasingly dependent on others. Another may still be walking every day, traveling, making plans, and living independently well into their 80s or 90s. So what are doctors seeing that makes the difference? It isn't one perfect blood pressure reading. It isn't a special supplement. And it certainly isn't one secret that guarantees you'll live to 100. Instead, there are several clues that, when we see them together, tell us something important: how well your body has handled the first 7 decades of life. And 6 of those clues stand out. Some are hidden in routine blood tests. One can be seen in the structure and function of your heart. Others are visible in your everyday life. How much you move, whether you still have a reason to get up each morning, and how much medical treatment your body requires just to stay stable. None of these can predict exactly how long you'll live, but they can help reveal whether you're entering your 70s with strength and reserve, or whether your body may already be moving toward greater frailty and dependence. And here's what makes this list worth paying attention to. You don't need to have all 6. Some of these factors can still be influenced by what you do today. We're going to count them down from number 6 to number 1, and the further we go, the more important the pattern becomes. Because the number 1 sign is something doctors repeatedly notice in remarkably healthy people who make it into their 80s and 90s. Before we get started, tell me something in the comments. How old are you, and where are you watching from today? It's always wonderful to see how far this community reaches. If this is your first time watching our channel, consider subscribing. We're here to share simple, practical information to help you stay healthier and independent as you grow older. Number 6 is a high HDL level. HDL stands for high-density lipoprotein, and you'll usually find it on the same cholesterol panel that shows LDL and triglycerides. When doctors see a relatively high HDL in someone around 70, especially alongside an active lifestyle and good metabolic health, they often view it as an encouraging sign. HDL helps transport cholesterol back toward the liver for processing, which is why it has traditionally been called the good cholesterol. In the original discussion, an HDL above about 60 was considered a particularly positive finding, while levels below roughly 30 to 40 were considered low. Doctors sometimes notice that older patients with high HDL also come from families with unusual longevity. Their parents or grandparents may also have lived unusually long lives. That suggests genetics can play an important role. But genetics isn't the only factor. People who walk regularly and exercise consistently often have a more favorable HDL profile. Diet also matters. Eating minimally processed foods, including good quality fish, can also support metabolic health. And this brings us to something many people miss. HDL quantity and HDL quality are not exactly the same thing. Having a higher number may look reassuring, but doctors also care about the metabolic environment in which that HDL exists. Regular movement, better food choices, and improved insulin sensitivity may help HDL function more effectively. That's why you should never use HDL alone to predict how long you'll live. And if your HDL is lower, don't assume you've failed. Genetics can influence it significantly. Someone who exercises regularly may still have a lower HDL than another person who inherited naturally high levels. But number 5 is completely different. You won't find it in your blood work, and no machine can measure it. Number 5, a sense of purpose. For decades, work gives many people a built-in structure. You wake up at a certain time. You have somewhere to go, people to talk to, responsibilities to handle, and problems that require your attention. Then retirement arrives, and almost overnight, that structure can disappear. Without replacing it, the pattern can become predictable. You have fewer reasons to leave the house. You interact with fewer people. You move less. The days begin to feel repetitive, and eventually, you may stop looking forward to much at all. That's why doctors pay attention when a patient in their 70s or 80s talks enthusiastically about what's coming next. Maybe they're planning a trip in October. Maybe they're picking up their grandchildren tomorrow. Maybe they can't wait to watch their favorite team play this weekend. Perhaps they volunteer at church, take care of a dog, work in the garden, meet friends every Wednesday, or have just started learning something new. The activity itself isn't the important part. What's important is that tomorrow still matters to them. Purpose doesn't have to mean changing the world or accomplishing something extraordinary. At 70, purpose may simply mean having a reason to get dressed in the morning and participate in life. And that reason can influence much more than your mood. Imagine someone who wakes up every morning because their dog needs a walk. That simple responsibility gets them out of bed. Going outside means they walk. Walking means they use their muscles and interact with their surroundings. They may meet a neighbor and have a conversation. They return home more physically active, eat breakfast, and continue with their day. The same pattern can happen with gardening, volunteering, caring for grandchildren, attending a community group, or meeting a friend for a regular morning walk. This is why daily rituals matter so much as we age. When you have something to do, you're more likely to stay engaged. When you're engaged, you're more likely to move. Regular movement can support better metabolic health, while an active day may also help you sleep better at night. Better sleep and meaningful social contact can, in turn, make it easier to manage stress. It becomes a positive cycle. So if you've retired and no longer have the schedule you once had, don't assume the solution is simply to stay busy. Ask a better question. What gives me a genuine reason to look forward to tomorrow? Before we move on, I'd love to hear from you. What is one thing you genuinely look forward to doing when you wake up in the morning? Share it in the comments below. Your answer might inspire someone else to find a new reason to look forward to tomorrow. Number 4 is a healthy echocardiogram. This one is more technical, but it can tell doctors something important about how your heart has handled decades of work. An echocardiogram is an ultrasound of the heart. It doesn't use radiation. Instead, it allows doctors to see the heart chambers, the valves, the thickness of the heart muscle, and how well the heart is pumping and relaxing. And in someone around 70, a heart that still looks structurally and functionally healthy can be very reassuring. The first measurement doctors often look at is the ejection fraction, or EF. Think of your heart's main pumping chamber as a container filled with blood. Each time it contracts, it pushes a portion of that blood forward. The ejection fraction estimates how much is pumped out with each contraction. In the discussion we're drawing from, an EF of roughly 55 to 70% is described as the normal range. But doctors don't stop there, because a heart can have a normal ejection fraction and still show other signs of long-term stress. One of those signs is the thickness of the heart muscle. If your blood pressure remains poorly controlled for years, the heart has to repeatedly pump against greater resistance. Over time, the muscle can become thicker. It's similar to how skeletal muscles respond to repeated resistance, except in the heart. Excessive thickening can be a warning sign rather than something you want. Doctors also look at the atria, the smaller upper chambers of the heart. When the heart has been exposed to abnormal pressure for a long time, these chambers may become enlarged. Their size can therefore provide another clue about what the heart has experienced over the years. Then there is something many patients have never heard about: diastolic function. Most people think heart health is simply about how strongly the heart squeezes. But after every contraction, the heart also has to relax properly so it can fill again. A heart can still squeeze relatively well while gradually becoming stiffer and less able to relax. This is called diastolic dysfunction, and it can become important when doctors are assessing how the heart is aging. Modern echocardiograms may provide another measurement called global longitudinal strain, or GLS. Without getting lost in the technical details, GLS allows doctors to examine the way the heart muscle contracts in a more sensitive way than simply looking at ejection fraction. In some situations, It may reveal subtle abnormalities before they become obvious through the traditional measurement of pumping function. But perhaps the most useful way to understand an echocardiogram is this. One echocardiogram is a photograph. Several echocardiograms taken years apart can become a story. Imagine having an echo at 62 and another at 70. If the heart's pumping ability remains strong, the chambers haven't significantly enlarged, the walls haven't developed concerning thickening, and the valves continue to function well, doctors now have something more valuable than a single normal result. Conversely, changes between two studies may help reveal a process that deserves attention even before severe symptoms appear. That's why the real value isn't simply being told, your echocardiogram is normal. It's understanding what your heart looks like today, what each measurement means in your individual situation, and when previous studies exist, whether anything meaningful has changed. Of course, an echocardiogram alone cannot tell you how long you'll live, and not every healthy 70-year-old needs repeated testing without a medical reason. Its findings must always be interpreted alongside symptoms, medical history, blood pressure, and other cardiovascular risk factors. But when doctors see a 70-year-old whose heart has maintained good structure and function through decades of life, that is certainly an encouraging sign. And now we're about to enter the top 3. But before we do, there's an important point worth addressing. Living a healthy life does not mean eating perfectly every day, never having dessert, and never missing a workout. Do doctors eat cake, chips, burgers, or pizza? Of course we do. One simple rule I like is, never do 2 bad things in a row. If you have pizza tonight, enjoy it, then return to your normal eating habits tomorrow. If you miss your walk or workout today, make sure one missed day doesn't become 2, then 3, then an entire week. One imperfect choice rarely defines your health. The danger is when that choice becomes a pattern. Healthy aging isn't built on perfection. It's built on repeatedly returning to good habits. And that brings us to the top 3 signs, starting with something doctors can see directly in your blood. And when it begins to fall in older adults, we pay attention. Number 3 is healthy protein and albumin levels. When reviewing blood tests in someone around 70, doctors often look at total protein and albumin. Protein isn't just something athletes need to build muscle. Your body depends on it constantly. You need protein to maintain muscle tissue, support immune function, repair cells, and preserve the structure of organs, including the heart, which is itself a muscle. That's why declining protein levels in an older adult can get our attention. Albumin is especially important. It's a protein made by the liver, and its level can be influenced by nutrition, inflammation, liver and kidney conditions, and other illnesses. But when albumin begins falling in an older patient, particularly alongside weight loss, weakness, poor appetite, or chronic disease, it can be an important warning sign. In the discussion behind this list, total protein around 6.5 or higher, and albumin around 3.5 were used as general reference points. When albumin falls into the low 3s, or around 2.7 to 2.8, doctors become much more concerned about what may be happening underneath. Why? Because low albumin can appear alongside a dangerous pattern in older adults. Poor nutritional status can accompany loss of muscle. Loss of muscle can contribute to sarcopenia. Sarcopenia can make standing, walking, climbing stairs, recovering from illness, and maintaining independence increasingly difficult. They move less because they're weak. Moving less can lead to further loss of muscle. Daily activities become harder, and recovery from illness or hospitalization may become more difficult. This is one reason doctors pay close attention when an older patient leaves the hospital after a prolonged stay. If they've lost weight, muscle, appetite, and their albumin is low, we don't simply see a laboratory number. We see a person whose physical reserve may have declined. When someone around 70 is eating adequately, maintaining muscle, staying physically active, and their protein and albumin levels remain appropriate for their medical situation. It suggests that some of the body's important reserves are still being maintained. But don't make the mistake of trying to fix a low albumin result simply by eating huge amounts of protein. A low level can have several causes and deserves proper medical evaluation. And if your numbers are normal, the goal is not to chase a higher laboratory value. It's to continue supporting the things behind healthy aging: adequate nutrition, enough protein for your individual needs, regular movement, and maintaining muscle. Because after 70, preserving muscle isn't about looking athletic. It's about preserving your ability to live independently. Number 2 is surprisingly simple. You walk a lot. When doctors meet someone around 70 who still walks regularly, takes long walks, hikes, or simply prefers walking instead of sitting whenever possible, we usually see it as a very encouraging sign, because walking tells us much more than whether your legs still work. To walk regularly, your muscles need to remain active. Your core helps stabilize your body. Your joints have to keep moving. Your bones continue experiencing weight-bearing activity. Your heart and lungs have to support continuous movement, and your balance and coordination are being challenged with every step. Walking also helps your muscles use glucose, making regular movement valuable for metabolic health. After 70, it's one of the simplest ways to keep multiple systems of the body working together. And this is where we often see two very different paths. One person retires and gradually starts sitting more. A short walk becomes driving. An afternoon outside becomes an afternoon in front of the television. They move less, so their muscles receive less stimulation. As they become weaker, walking feels harder, so they move even less. That's how a downward cycle can begin. Another person keeps walking. They walk to the store when possible. They take the dog outside. They walk after breakfast. They meet a friend and walk around the neighborhood. They continue using their legs every day, even if they're moving more slowly than they did at 50. One doctor in the original discussion made an interesting observation from years of following older patients. Around age 83, he often begins to see people separate into two groups: those who continue walking, eating adequately, staying hydrated, and remaining active, often continue functioning remarkably well. But among those who stop walking regularly, decline can become much more noticeable. That's a clinical observation, not a rule about what suddenly happens at age 83. But it illustrates something important. The older you become, the more valuable it may be to protect your ability to move, because once muscle and mobility decline, everyday tasks can become harder. Standing from a chair requires more effort. Stairs become intimidating, balance may worsen, and falls become increasingly consequential. Regular walking helps you keep practicing the very ability you need to remain independent. This may also help explain an interesting pattern, often discussed in relation to blue zones. Communities known for having unusually high numbers of long-lived people. In many of these places, movement isn't treated as a separate one-hour workout. It's built into daily life. People walk to visit friends. They walk to shops or community gatherings. Some live in villages, where hills and slopes make ordinary walking more demanding. They don't necessarily think, "Now, I'm exercising." They simply keep moving, because movement is part of the way they live. You don't need to become a marathon runner at 70. You don't need to chase an arbitrary step count if your health or mobility makes that unrealistic. If you're already walking regularly, protect that habit. If you've become sedentary, start at a level appropriate for your health and build gradually, especially if you have heart, balance, joint, or mobility problems. And now we come to number 1, fewer medications. A patient walks into the clinic at 90, 95, sometimes even 98 years old. They're still mentally sharp, still moving independently, still engaged with life. Then we open their medical chart and look at the medication list. 2 medications. Maybe 3 or 4. Sometimes none. The important point is not that medications shorten your life, or that taking fewer pills automatically makes you healthier. The real message is what a short medication list can sometimes represent. If someone reaches their 80s or 90s needing relatively few medications, it may mean they've avoided or successfully managed many of the chronic conditions that commonly accumulate with age. They may have maintained healthier blood pressure, better metabolic health, more physical activity, and a body that simply requires less medical intervention to remain stable. So fewer medications can sometimes be a reflection of better underlying health, not the cause of it. And there's another reason doctors pay attention to medication lists in older adults. Polypharmacy. Polypharmacy simply means taking multiple medications. And as that list grows, medication management can become increasingly complicated. This is where something called a prescribing cascade can occur. Imagine medication A is prescribed for one problem. It causes a side effect. That side effect is mistaken for a new medical condition, so medication B is added. Medication B then causes another problem, and medication C is prescribed. Before long, one original treatment has turned into several medications, each with its own potential side effects and interactions. For a younger person, the body may tolerate this more easily. But as we age, changes in kidney function, liver function, body composition, and overall physical reserve can affect how medications are processed and tolerated. But this is also where we need to be extremely clear. Do not stop a medication simply because you're 70 and want a shorter medication list. Some medications are essential. Someone with high blood pressure may need treatment to reduce cardiovascular risk. A person with thyroid disease may require thyroid medication. Other heart conditions, diabetes, blood clotting disorders, and many chronic diseases can require medications that provide important benefits. A 75-year-old taking several necessary medications may be far healthier with those medications than without them. So the goal is not, take as few pills as possible. The goal is, take the medications you genuinely need and regularly review whether every medication still has a clear purpose. Ask your doctor, why am I taking this? Is it still necessary? Could any of my symptoms be side effects? Are any of these medications interacting? Has my medication list been reviewed recently? And if a medication may no longer be necessary, reducing or stopping it should be done with medical supervision. Some drugs can cause serious problems if stopped suddenly. The remarkably healthy 90-year-old with only 2 medications isn't necessarily healthy because they avoided medicine. More often, the short medication list is one clue that their body has reached an advanced age without accumulating as much disease or treatment burden as we commonly see. Someone who remains physically active may maintain better metabolic health and muscle. Someone who preserves good nutrition and strength may remain more resilient. Someone whose cardiovascular system remains healthy may require fewer interventions. Someone who has purpose and daily routines may continue engaging in the behaviors that support health year after year. And sometimes, the result of all those factors is visible in one surprisingly simple place: their medication list. That's why fewer medications earns the #1 position. Not because pills are inherently bad, but because needing relatively little medical treatment at an advanced age can be one of the clearest outward signs of how well the body has aged. So, what do these 6 signs really tell us? They don't tell us exactly how long someone will live. No blood test, heart scan, exercise routine, or medication list can make that promise. What they can show us is how well the body has carried itself through 7 decades of life. And the encouraging part is that healthy aging doesn't require perfection. You don't need perfect cholesterol. You don't need to eat perfectly every day. You don't need to walk 10,000 steps without fail or reach 70 without ever needing medication. Keep walking while you still can. Protect your muscle and nutrition. Give yourself something meaningful to wake up for. Pay attention to your heart and your blood work. And make sure the medications you take are still appropriate for you. One choice may seem insignificant, but repeat it for a year, then 5 years, then 10, and those choices become your lifestyle. You cannot control everything that happens as you age. Genetics matter. Disease happens. Life remains unpredictable, but at any age. There are still decisions that can move the odds in your favor. So don't ask yourself whether you're doing all 6 things perfectly. Ask yourself a simpler question. What is one thing I can do today that my 80-year-old self will be grateful for? Then do that again tomorrow. because a long life is valuable. But reaching those later years with the strength, independence, and health to continue enjoying them is what truly matters. If this video gave you something useful to think about, tell us in the comments. Which of these 6 signs are you already doing well with? Subscribe so you don't miss our next healthy aging video. And if you'd like to connect with others who are also working toward a healthier, more independent life after 60, consider joining our community. We'd be very happy to have you with us.